Welcome back, everyone. I don't know about you, but it's kind of hard to believe we're already entering hour number three. This has gone by so quickly, and I know it's because of the incredible speakers that have been sharing their thoughts with you during these first 2 hours. Let's move into our third hour, where our topic is social justice. I'm glad to bring back to the panel for this discussion Deb Martinez, Claudine Champion, and Pierre Quinn. Joining them is Frank DeAngelis. Frank is the retired principal of Columbine High School. He was the principal of Columbine 20 years ago when tragedy struck the students and families of the Columbine community. He continues to serve by telling the story of that day and its aftermath, a message he carries with him wherever he goes across the United States, Canada, and Europe. It's so good to see you all. Welcome back to the folks that just came from that last session. Are you going to be okay for this session, or is Frank and I going to have to carry the whole hour by ourselves? All right, good. That was the right answer. I heard nothing. All right, good. And just remember, and this is for the benefit of the audience, that the folks that don't know me, I do have a bit of a sense of humor, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you don't quite get my humor, send me an email and I'll write you an explanation, whatever you didn't think was funny. That's all I can say. And this is a small community. We're like family here. So I'm not trying to treat this as some big audacious event. It's just a conversation with some incredible people. So let's get to it. First question. I'm going to start with Frank because he's fresh. He's fresh into the room. What does social justice mean to you, Frank?
Social justice to me means where everyone is created equally and treated fairly. I think that's so important that we hear about social justice, but depending on who you are, it doesn't necessarily happen. And I think that's the most important thing. We hear a lot of rhetoric, but I think what I've learned this morning and this afternoon from so many is we can speak the words, but it's carrying out the action. And that social justice piece is so important. And I think the thing that worries me, and I'm old, and I know Claudine talked about what it was like during the 60s, and I grew up during that time and during the Vietnam War, and our country was divided. But I don't know if we've ever been this divided. And it really bothers me over so many issues. And what scares me right now more than anything is we could disagree with people, but we don't even take the time to listen to them. And that's bothering me. And it's my goal to change that. And so social injustice is we all live in America, but we're all not treated equally and fairly.
Yeah. Good. Claudine, what does it mean?
I don't know that I like that word social justice so much because of the justice aspect of it, which includes the political and the judicial, which, yeah. So I feel like it should be social harmony that we're driving toward, because then that means we've looked past all of those differences and we are connected to one another from the heart instead of from the head. I think that's what I was trying to say. Social justice puts you more in a head space, and social harmony puts you in a heart space. And I think that's the thing we should be fighting for, is social harmony. And then the justice part will work itself out.
Okay. Pierre?
I think there's a tension and even referencing what Claudine was saying, there's a tension in how do we outline what justice is? And even in our pursuit of justice, can we move unjustly? I think there's a huge tension there. I recognize, what Frank said about this idea we're all created equally, and we should have, when you look at the dictionary definition of social justice, this idea that we should all have equal access to the things that sustain life. I think the challenge for a lot of us is, if you Google social justice issues, you'll come back with hundreds of pages, at least according to Google, of challenges that we face in our culture and in our society. And I think it's a struggle of determining what issues, what challenges, what differences am I going to key in on and make a difference on? And do I really believe that it's possible to create an environment where people are together on those particular things.
Yeah. Yeah. Deb, what is it? I mean, you're dealing with people that have nothing.
Exactly. And so I want to say that when you actually look it up in the dictionary, it says just social justice in terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privilege within a society.
Mm-hmm.
So you come here to the Mission of Love Charities. I want you guys to know the majority of our members that come here and clients are Vietnam vets. Okay. None of them should have to come here and get food, referrals for medication, therapy sessions. They should be treated with the utmost respect. And unfortunately, they're not. Most of them are homeless, need help. And I have to say, I love working here. I've committed to come here to make a big change. And I appreciate the county executive's office and our county council and my board chair and my board, because they really are helping us make a change. So when you want to say social justice, let me tell you, I see children that come here that don't have shoes and it's wintertime. This is the United States of America. I want to know what's going on. I want to know why young mothers have to come to me to get prenatal care. We really need to look and revise what we're looking at and start thinking about others instead of always ourselves, and try to really look at how we can come together as a nation. We have our differences and we know what's going on and all of that. But when you talk about privileges and things like that, I'm very, very sympathetic to the veterans. We have Afghani war veterans coming here, and we have large Afghan population coming here. But at the same time, every day I struggle to get funding to make sure that we're feeding them, giving them just daily things that we take for granted. And where's the justice in that? Where's the justice in a veteran needing me to stop to call the VA to get them an appointment?
Yeah.
So I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah. And it's why you're so successful in your service, Deb. Passion is to me, passion is fuel. All of you on the screen have passion for your callings, and that's why you're succeeding in helping other people. I want to just add one other element on behalf of my good and dear friend, Bob Swanson, who was supposed to be with us in this conversation, to bring another aspect of social justice into the conversation. And that has to do with social justice as it relates to people who are suffering from addiction, mental health, or have experienced suicide. Again, we think narrowly about social justice just as the ripple effect, frankly, of the pandemic that began 2 years ago and just kind of amplified so many different things. So we had an economic crisis, and then we had the social crisis. And that's one of the reasons why, when I thought about my vision for this summit and these conversations, I talked about inclusion and social justice and a path to getting to it. And we're on that path, and leaders like yourselves are the ones that are going to get us there. But Bob would speak with great passion about how he spent the last few years of his life talking to people about the lack of equality, the lack of resources, the lack of understanding around mental health, addiction, and suicide. So it's another part of this whole equation. So why is fairness and equality viewed as a matter of public policy and laws rather than about humanity? I'm going to wait to see who jumps up first on this one. Okay, Godine, you smiled. The questions are getting harder as we go through these sessions.
Because I'm going to say that it's public policy. It shouldn't be public policy. This is why I'm having a hard time answering this question, because by the mere virtue of the fact that we're talking about fairness and equality in a public policy space puts it right back into that judicial, basically systemic racism, right? It puts it in that space where it shouldn't be. We should just, this is a touchy subject for me because I am very passionate about it. And I feel like this shouldn't even still be a conversation. Again, it's 2022. Why are we still fighting for equality? Why are we still so divided? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's a political issue. It's being addressed as a political issue rather than a human issue. We're all responsible for each other. We came here to be responsible for each other and care for each other. And as long as we continue to let other people, and when I say other people, I mean in the political space, you know, people blame the government for things, but the government is run by people. People blame the judicial system for things, but the judicial system is run by people. So we need to, outside of these organized institutions, we need to recognize that the people within those institutions need to be held accountable for keeping us in this space. I don't know how else to say that in a way. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that because we shouldn't still be here, and it needs to be about us individually moving forward.
And
Right.
if I can
Yeah.
just chime in, I think something that's so relevant right now, and I'm going to turn to the NFL, the National Football League, and there's policy out there right now that you have the Rooney Law where it's mandatory that you have to interview a minority, but that's just a law. And we see the same unjust hiring practices now. It's Brian Flores from the Miami Dolphins who was fired, that he brought suit against these teams. And you could have laws in place and, cross the T's and dot the I's, but we're not changing. We're still acting the same way we were. And laws don't necessarily, people have to change, and we need to do that.
Thank you, Frank.
It took me two hours to fix my microphone. It's fixed now, so I know I sound louder, and I'm ready. Actually ready 2 hours later. I think one of the challenges that we have is that when we create a policy, when we create a law, it allows us to check off the box of performative function. It allows us to say, well, we did something. And we see this even in corporate context across the board. Well, we started a committee, or we had a meeting. Well, we did the thing, and it checks off that box, but it never puts us in an uncomfortable place where we have to push back against the culture. And the idea is I can create a law, I can create a policy, but if I never have the conversation about what's going on in the heads and hearts of individuals, we can create all the policies in the world and it will be of non-effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. Let's move on to another question. How do you relate your experiences to the realities we're facing? Claudine?
So I'm going to say I grew up like Deborah did. My mother was born on the south side of Chicago in a very non-diverse community, and she made very sure that I grew up in a diverse community. So while I am aware of being a Black woman in America, I was never more aware of it until 2016. I went from being comfortable in my skin to very uncomfortable and very afraid. I'd never thought about getting in my car and driving and what could possibly happen if I get pulled over by the police. I never thought about being in the wrong space, in the wrong group of people, and how that could potentially put me in harm's way. Was never even a consideration until 2016. So I feel that until people can really understand what it's like, and I'm going to be very specific about what I say, because this really is about, we live in a country where it is white and then there's everyone else, right? But underneath everyone else are Black people. And because of all the unrest that came up with the Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden the Black Lives Matter movement is considered a negative instead of a positive. And when I look at the history of this country and the groups that came together to help Black people have a voice in the country, they became villainized instead of people recognizing and accepting the truth, right? So here we are again in 2022 and still experiencing police brutality, still experiencing unjust and abject racism in certain spaces. It's like, how do we move forward if people can't understand what that's like? And it didn't really hit me until I found myself in that space of fear. And I don't live in fear. I've never lived in fear. And so while I've always cared about what happens in the community, it became even more important and critical that we do something to help us get out of this unnecessary space. It's like, why are we why are we still here?
Yeah.
You know,
Deb?
one of
Oh, go ahead, please, Frank. Go.
one of the challenges I had when I started at Columbine High School, and I grew up in a community, it was an Italian community, and we had diversity in the community. But when I went to Columbine High School, it was a shock to me because it was a school almost of entitlement at the time. And I taught social studies, and I taught when I started talking about sectionalism and slavery and things of this nature, and we had these discussions. These kids did not realize that there was life, 6 miles south or north of Columbine. And things like, well, I don't understand why they can't do this and they can't do that. And one of the smartest activities I did, and I'm lucky I still have my job, but one of the things that I did is these same kids, I walked into class and I gave two different tests. And the first test was the three colors of the flag, who was the first president. And then I gave the Alabama literacy exam that they gave to African Americans in order to vote. And so did that the next day. Basically, I go in and start going over the test. And the kids are saying, that is so unfair. And I said, you keep your mouth shut. You get on the floor, and if you talk back to me, we're going to have an issue. Well, the principal was in on it, and one kid told me to do something to myself. And so I sent him to the principal's office, and the principal said, that Frank DeAngelis is one of the best teachers, and you're going to listen to him. And all of a sudden the kids come back, parents are calling. I said, see, what I wanted to show something to you. We did this for 20 minutes, a half hour, and you felt dumped upon and things like that. So now can you look at things differently? And many times we need to just change. People, they don't understand. And one of the things that we did at Columbine is we would do student exchanges with students that would come from inner city to Columbine High School to see our culture, and our kids would go over to the inner city. It made such a big difference finding out about others.
Yeah. Yeah. If just the historical perspective is if there was a measure of patience in building relationships, one person at a time, we might be enjoying some different experiences today. And I put a lot of hope in the two newest generations in the workplace, that they may be the generations that lead us out of some of the morass that we're in today, that we just can't find a way out. And unfortunately, it seems like the path is not as crooked as we like it to feel. It's a pretty straight path. And it starts simply with the fact that you can't know a person until you know them. You can't understand why they behave in a certain way until you understand them. And I think that's the practical essence of a lot of what we're challenged with. And so this notion of social justice, the term came to be something to talk about only because of the once in a lifetime advent of a medical crisis. We wouldn't be talking about social justice because other things happened after that happened that all happened as a result of it. And so we're in this strange time. And I keep saying this, and people keep saying, yeah, I agree, but it's only an excuse. Because again, that's why we talk about the notion of getting down to about this all being about humanity, not about policy, not about politics, not about corporate governance. It's about humanity.
Exactly.
Comments? Any comments from my esteemed group? Pierre?
One of the things that's very important, and this has been a unifying thread throughout all of our conversations today, is that sometimes we are asking for jobs, we're asking for systems, we're asking for other relationships, we're asking other teams that we're on to do for us things that we have not first done for ourselves. There is no way that your validation or support of me can change my internal perception if I have not first learned to value the space where I come from. We see this all the time with actors, entertainers, and celebrities, right? The world literally falls at their feet and gives them everything that they want, and they still feel, you know, broken or empty or less than, because that's something that happens on the inside. So my parents are from the South. My mom is from Arkansas. My dad is from Mississippi. They grew up in the 50s in Arkansas and Mississippi and migrated to Michigan in the 60s and 70s. So the world for me as a black kid from parents who are from the South, living in an inner city neighborhood, going to PWIs his entire life. My parents told me the same thing, and it's still a tension, Dennis, that that I feel today as a leadership coach, keynote speaker, and corporate trainer. I recognize that if I don't go into the space knowing who I am, knowing what my qualifications are, and knowing I can own a room or a process, there's no one that's going to give that to me. And if it comes secondarily, it still won't fill a void if I've not first affirmed and believed in my story and my contribution to the world. So I think a lot of the tension that we're feeling is we are missing out on that first self-acceptance piece. And I think, well, if I can just get this passed or get this note or award, it's going to fill an internal void. And it won't. It has to happen from the inside first. And that's how you can begin to affect change on the outside.
Yeah. I could quickly share about something that Deb and I are involved in together, which is helping a recently retired school teacher realize her vision to try to teach students in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grades leadership, but starting by teaching them to understand themselves and build a foundation. She calls it self-leadership. And I think, when we talk about could we learn more things? Could we talk about more things? I think fundamentally, and I'd be interested in Deb's additional thoughts, fundamentally, we have to go back to the beginning of people's learning experiences. And if it can't happen any sooner than when they get into a nursery school, it needs to happen there. If we wait until high school and wait until college and take a communications class from Pierre Quinn, and then he forces us to talk to each other in a communications class, I mean, really. So we need to go all the way back to the beginning, and also recognize that some of it is wired in, is part of our DNA, and so we have to be interested in learning more about that. Can you tell the social justice thing kind of lights me up a little bit? I've been talking too much. I'm not supposed to talk. Farber is probably sitting there saying, "Why is he talking so much?" All right, so here's another question. God bless you, Frank. What is the difference between giving people what they deserve versus giving them what they need?
Well, who's to say what somebody deserves?
I was just about to say that. Well, who are we to say that's what people deserve? People should get what they want, and they should have their own kind of like power within themselves to go out and achieve certain things. We have to also say that a lot of times we have to kind of encourage, engage, and embrace people for them to want to do things and want to go out and involve them in certain things. I'll give you a quick example here. How many women that are homeless get facials? Well, I pay for it out of my pocket. Have somebody come here. We have a hair salon person come here. We try to make these women feel better. We try to get them into programs where they can get workforce development training. So I would never say that I should do that. I mean, everyone deserves good things. You don't have to have great things. I mean, I'd love to hit the lotto, but I'm okay. I'm doing all right. And it's my job to help that one or two people. I'm however many people we can help here, we're going to do it. But no, that's not what they need. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
That is not a Deb Martinez saying right there. Okay.
Claudine?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we just level the playing field, first of all, and make it, and I'm not even going to use that equality word. If we just level the playing field and the people involved who make decisions about why one group of people gets what they need and other people have to prove that they deserve it, because that's kind of how that question hit me, is like some nebulous force has decided that this group of people deserve it just simply because of the color of their skin, and this other group has to prove, or this other group gets it because of the color of their skin. This other group has to prove that they deserve it because of the color of their skin. How about if we just eliminate all that? The thing that I think that people are missing, especially in business spaces, is that the more accessibility that you give people to the things that they need, the more money they're willing to spend, the more willing they are to come to your establishments, the more willing they are to buy your products. But keeping us all separated, I mean, I even think that the nonsensicalness of the class system, right? Why are there people who have billions of dollars and then there's people who are homeless, people who fought for our country and don't get supported by our country because people, hold on, Alexa's getting ready to tell me to drink water. Sorry. Forgot to turn her off. Why are there all these distinctions? Why don't we just, I mean, I know it feels like a crazy thing to say. But why is all of this necessary? Like, how is this helping us as a country to have all of this divisiveness and all of this separation, and again, people having to prove that they deserve to have a roof over their head, to have food in their stomachs and clothing on their back, as opposed to just the human need to be provided for?
Yeah. Pierre?
There's another way of even framing out that word deserve, which can put us in on equally dangerous footing. I'm gonna give you what you deserve. And I don't know, Frank, as a principal, I know how I'm sure you wrestle with that with your young people. Like, these kids deserve, based on actions, based on activity, here's what they deserve, but here's the action that I'm going to take. So I think that pendulum of deserve can swing both ways, equally as dangerous. These people deserve it because they come from X, Y, and Z, and there's no question, there's no interview, there's no pushback. And then on the other side, from even a retribution standpoint, if we just gave people what they deserve, we would have a different world. Actually, we would.
No.
Right.
No. Frank?
Geez, I'm just honored to be with the people here today and bringing up so much. And, I think that key is you're driving home some key points. And, one of the things that I try to do with our kids is teach them that they could pay it forward, pass it on. Because one of the things that I learned is we can tell them what to do, but we need to give them those skills to do it. And I think that's so important. And the work that all of you are doing that. Not only are you graciously giving, but you're also giving them the skills that they could help others and pass it along. And what we're going to be on the face of this earth for a short time, but what do we want this society to look like? And what scares me and what has really touched me, and I'm struggling today, is we're having conversations, and Claudine has mentioned it a few times, is here we were 1960s and now we're in 2022. Have we come? Have we changed much? Why? And what are we going to be 50 years from now? What is it going to look like for our kids and grandkids? But the thing about us, and the reason that we're all part of this group, is we refuse to be helpless and we refuse to be hopeless, and we're not giving in. and we're not going to stop. And even if it's traveling that journey alone, we're not giving up.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I just share something really quickly? Because I think that this, for me, is also the distinction between deserve and need. I was teaching at Chicago State, and it was a research writing class, and the school changed the rules at the last minute, and the students had serious issues about it. And I told them, in my classroom, we don't complain. Like, you're either going to do something about it or you're going to shut up talking about it. We're not wasting class time. And they thought I was crazy when I said do something about it. So instead of like force it down their throat, I just had them, since it was a research class, I had them do research, like the poverty level. And they had them go check out what is the poverty level in the United States. And they came back and said it. And so I said, do you think poverty is a state of mind or a state of being? And they all said it was a state of mind. And I said, okay, so you think that people that are poor deserve to be poor? And they said yes. And I said, okay, so anybody that lives below the poverty level deserves to be there. They said yes. I said, okay, so the poverty level right now in this country is $14,000. Ask me how much money I make. Now, they knew I started off the every class saying that I quit a 6-figure job to go back to school so that I could teach, or it wasn't why I did it, but that is where I wound up. So I said, how much do you think I make? And they were like, 70, 80, because they're basing it on the fact that I'm a college professor. My salary that year was like $4,000. And I'd been to Africa. I'd traveled, I'd done all sorts of things with barely any money. I said, so am I poor because I believe I'm poor? Or am I just in a state of being in this moment that could change? And it got them thinking about it. And long story short is I helped them find their voice. And in them finding their voice, they actually stood up to the school and very respectfully gave their opinion about why they didn't want to pay this money that they were being forced to pay to turn in a research paper. And 7 of my students changed the rule for all of the school. Now, I didn't have a job the next semester, and I told them that was going to be the cause. That was going to be the case because, somebody has to wind up on the chopping block. But it was worth it for me to not teach at that school anymore, to know that I helped 25 young people recognize the power of their voice. And I think that is what we need to do more of in any space that we can do it. I do it wherever I go. I just happen to have a classroom, which was great at that time. But I think that we need to help young people, or people in general, recognize the power of our voices. And it's like my mother used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? Yeah. We can get people to do anything and change their minds if we come from a place of love and not from a place of demanding and fighting. That's part of the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, one of the things that comes to mind around this notion of deserving versus needing, every living, breathing human being deserves to be respected. If they then, based on their behavior over a period of time, indicate that they are not deserving of respect, then they've made their bed to sleep in. But you don't make a decision saying this person doesn't deserve this person doesn't deserve that, and particularly when you base it on the differences between you and the other person. It could be the racial difference, it could be an ethnic difference, it could be a whole variety of different differences that leave you in a place of saying, they don't deserve to be successful. No, he didn't get a master's degree. He didn't go to. He's not a master craftsperson. He's just a crappy old carpenter, and he's making more money than most of the other guys that work here for 30 years. All those kinds of things come into our heads. Need is about what a human is about sustenance. It's almost, to me, it's that simple. The deserving part again starts with respect, and everything else that comes from that. You need to indicate to people by your words and your actions that you are worthy of respect. Again, that's to me that's the path that I choose. Another question: do you believe that your education prepares you to live in a diverse America? Gladine's looking away from the camera now.
Away from the camera.
Yeah, he's looking away from the camera now. I'm telling you, these questions aren't getting easier. And this is Starla Lewis's question. I want you to know it's coming from Starla. She is hanging on every word.
I'm going to say no. Not my, well, here's the thing. Was it my public school education? Absolutely not.
There we go.
My home education with my mother? Absolutely. But, I think that our public school system is designed to make certain children feel good about themselves and other children not feel good about themselves. And if you grew up in a school where the only thing you learned about yourself was struggle, strife, slavery, and that's all you have to look forward to, then no, you're not prepared to be in a diverse world, because it automatically makes you start hating yourself, which then outwardly you hate people that look like you. So, yeah, I would say no.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
The question is, though, why is it designed that way? Like, people are fighting about critical race theory. I think that's a whole different thing. But the education that we get about ourselves and about each other shouldn't create shame and blame or anger. Shouldn't elicit anger. It should make you feel good to learn something new about not only other people, but about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, your lips are starting to move.
I know I'm not saying something. My wife says that all the time. Lips move, but you don't say anything. Anyway, I'll think back to my education. And again, it was in the 70s. And I think some of the best lessons I learned was from my parents, but also going out and finding areas where I needed to be educated. Because when I was in college, I went into the inner city to coach kids, something that I did not grow up with or participate. And by being around others and doing things that not necessarily made me comfortable, but it taught me to learn and trust. And I think some of our best lessons in life are not necessarily what we learn in the classroom, but what we experience each and every day by the things that we do. And, if I feel there's an area of weakness, then I need to go out and figure out how to eliminate some of the weakness there and not be afraid to learn and be open-minded.
Yeah. Pierre?
Formal education for most of us, no.
That wasn't a closed-end question. You need to say more than no.
Sorry, I was practicing my Glodine response. It didn't work. I think when we think back on our educational experiences, for most of us, we can identify maybe one teacher, maybe two teachers whose course really helped shape how we live, work, and play, in our world today. When we think about teachers that win awards, when we think about administrators that win awards, most of them win those awards because they push back against the status quo. They looked at what's happening and they're like, nah, that's not good enough. I'm going to teach my students. I'm going to push them. I'm going to challenge them. I'm going to encourage them to be professional and organized and research and question some of the policies and procedures that guide our institution. Those are the teachers that make the difference. But for a lot of reasons, many young people, ourselves included on this panel, did not have a lot of those interactions in our formal education process. But to go back to what Frank was saying, all of us on this panel recognize there have been areas of our lives where we needed growth and development. So we got a certification, we found a mentor, we found a coach, we took a course. And even today, we're in a continual process of learning and education that we're passing on to our clients and our colleagues.
Yeah. Deb?
I'm going to say yes and no, because I kind of had a different type of education. I have to be honest. Did I learn everything? No. Did I get some really good experiences? I'm going to say yes. But I'm going to say I had great grandparents. My grandfather owned a barbershop. And what I learned there, you could never repay the type of lessons you learned in that barbershop. He was immaculate. He was master barber. He did everything. He showed you about business. He taught us how to do a business ledger. I mean, he taught us how to count the cash receipts. So from a business perspective, I learned everything, I think, honestly, through him. School was good, but he was the best. I do feel that school segregates children, not just by race, but I think by behavior. There used to be a class in our school where the bad kids went, or the kids that they were slow. And I think that sometimes that was a hindrance on the children. So fortunate I had parents that were so interested in us as children. We kind of had a better life because our parents were that involved, almost to the fact that my father introduced us to jazz when I was like in the 7th grade. That's something you're just not going to get in a school. But jazz is just one of the most. It's like, what do they say? The 7 wonders of the world. Stevie Wonder's the 8th. Well, jazz to me was the 9th. So I'm just saying that to say that it has to be a combination of home training and home, what you get from home or grandparents or whatever. But the school has such a big effect on children. And unfortunately, I do agree that they lack. But school is not there for everything. School is there for a purpose. It is left up to the parents and mentors and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and programs and the nonprofits that are around to try to help kids and build their inner selves and understanding. That's where I think that we as a society lack, because I can't put everything on when I sent my children to school to feel that a teacher is going to teach them everything. That's my obligation to a large degree. And that's the way I was raised. I knew about racism when I was 7 because my parents taught us, about certain things and what they had experienced. I have a 1963 March on Washington badge that my parents had. I have it right on my desk at home because that was important to us. That was important to them. And let me say this for the record. My grandfather's barbershop was in Georgetown on 3200 block of M Street. So if you know anything about DC, you know where that barbershop was.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of look at it that, it's a twofold. While I agree teachers, schools could be totally different. And I do feel that they really do segregate children to a large degree. But at the same time, it is left up to parents and families to teach children also. Because you come home from school doesn't mean the learning has to stop. To me, it means the learning really begins. And that's how I was raised.
Dennis, there's this book, Everything I Need to Learn. Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, something to that effect. Yeah. Kindergarten is an interesting space, interesting place. The paradigms are totally different in kindergarten. But by the time you get to first grade all the way up until, graduation, college, much of it is individualized progression. So I tell some of my clients all the time, you're bringing me in for tens of thousands of dollars to teach you well-educated professionals how to play in the sandbox together. I'm going to teach you. We're going to do it. These are some things that we taught you in kindergarten and that fell by the wayside along the way, and we're just coming back to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll add, thinking about education and what it meant. I went to for my primary education, I went to a Catholic elementary school. I was taught by, Frank's crossing himself. I was taught by Dominican nuns. And so I learned the basics. Somehow I never got penmanship in my elementary education. I don't know why. Maybe I fell asleep during that class. Honest to God, never learned penmanship. But I did learn that you don't talk in the line to the bathroom. I definitely learned that. So if I go into an airport bathroom, nobody's going to be talking to me in a bathroom. I can tell you that right now. But do I remember learning anything about being a person trying to learn? No, I didn't really learn anything about that. In sixth grade, I met and actually became very good friends with a young man who came into the sixth grade. His father was in the military, ran a munitions arsenal up in northern New Jersey, and he came and joined our class. And he was chubby, as was I. I was fairly overweight as a kid. I wore very thick glasses. My sons used to kid me even up until a few years ago. Dad, can you see them? Can you see the hair on the man on the moon's forehead? And his name was Walter McDowell. Walter McDowell was black. He was the first black person that I had ever talked to. He and I, because of the things we had in common, being overweight, not athletic, kind of gabby, became very, very good friends. I learned more from that relationship about people than anything I was taught by the Dominican nuns. Not to disparage Dominican nuns, but that's just my experience. I think, Deb, you are so blessed, as is Glodine. I mean, Glodine's blessing goes to the extent that she wrote a beautiful book talking about her mother and her life with her mother. But you're very, very blessed to have what you had in your household. Not everybody does. And that's a generational issue. The prior generations didn't teach the next generation where we need to learn about humanity, where we need to learn about respect, where we need to learn about how we love each other and support each other. It's a blank space in a lot of homes, and now it remains a blank space because a lot of homes are impoverished, and they don't know when the light's going to go back on or when the water is going to be reconnected. And that's the sustaining suffering that a lot of people are going through. It's a challenging time.
And Dennis, I can tell you that's why I'm here at the Mission of Love Charities.
Yeah.
Because I pay water bills, I pay rent, I pay utility bills, I get food for people, I get kids school books, I work with Start Engineering, I work with all the agencies I can get with to give me tools to make sure these children had what I had and what my children had.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I had a dynamite mother. I mean, my mother quit her government job, and you know what I'm talking about, Glodine, that good government job to go to Howard University to get us remission of tuition for college. Now, you tell me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my mother told me, the only thing you can mess up in the world is not teaching your children the truth. And she never lied. She never got to go to college, by the way. But she said, if you wanted to go, the free education was there. And that says a lot. And I'm very blessed. And by the way, Frank, I go to St. Francis de Sales Catholic Church. I'm a good Catholic. And the next time we see Dennis, we're going to throw holy water on him because he made the Philip of the cross. So to the Pope, I think I've done my good job today.
And I had penmanship because I had a nun that had a great ruler. So the people still know what I'm talking about.
Oh my God, I remember that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember the rulers. All right. Here's our last question, our wrap-up question. What can we do? What actions can we take to make the aspiration of equality a reality?
Teach our kids. Acknowledge each other when you see each other on the street. And I think that's the biggest thing. We are so focused on whatever it is that we're doing, we don't even acknowledge when we see each other on the street. And when I used to live in Chicago, I lived in what's called South Shore, and was predominantly Black. And there were, brothers in the gangs that lived in the community. And I chose to take the bus to school when I was teaching. And one Halloween, I decided I'm gonna acknowledge these brothers when I pass them, because in all fairness, they look like if you said the wrong thing to them, they'd beat you into a pulp because of the way that they move through the world. I think that was their shield, their protection, to have people leave them alone, right? So I started speaking to them. Like I'd walk past and say good morning, and it was like all of a sudden the scowl turned into a smile, and then after a while they would see me coming and they'd say, what's up, sis? And we started to have kind of, building a relationship, or at least they appreciated being acknowledged. when I was in Atlanta, there was a homeless woman on the street, and I was walking with a white friend of mine, and the woman, we stopped to talk to her because my dog went up to her, and we stopped to talk to her, and it was a Black woman, and she looked up at my friend and said, "You're the first white woman who's ever acknowledged seeing me." She brought us all to tears. And I thought, you know what? This is part of the problem. So I think that equality won't even be an issue if we start acknowledging the humanness in each other, recognizing, and just, like I said, paying homage to seeing another human being that you're passing on the street,
Yeah.
especially if they don't look like you. I think that's where we start.
Yeah. Frank.
Something just quickly, I think that's so important that the people on this panel are so articulate, and we share messages, but it's going out and role modeling. And what Claudine just said is so important. And you can get up in front of kids and talk about it. And I love the quote, "Character and integrity is who you are when no one is watching," just going out and doing it. And you'd be surprised how many people are watching it. And it's like a chain reaction. And that's what we need to do. We can get up and talk about it and all the issues, but what are we doing in our own life to change it and get other people to follow?
Yeah. Pierre, Deb, any last thoughts on this question?
Yeah. You ever bought a car and it seems like everywhere you go, you see that car? Ever had that experience?
Yes.
So I used to teach my college students about perception. And I said perception is based on these few things. Perception is based on what you believe, what you value, what your attitude is, and what your interests are. And if it doesn't fall inside of your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, and interests, you'll never see it. It will never show up on your radar. The only reason why you see a red drop top convertible everywhere you go is because you bought one. You bought one because you believed it was worth having. It was high priority on your value list. You had a great attitude about it and it met your interest. I think it's the same thing when we're looking to connect with people. I have to believe that people are important. I have to value the stories of others. I have to have a great attitude with people who are different than me and develop a keen interest in learning from someone else's story. And the more that I resonate with that, the more I'll be able to pick up and engage on all the people really that I've been missing, who have been there all along and just waiting on someone to come along and acknowledge them the same way I want someone to acknowledge me.
Yeah. Deb, any last thought?
I'm just going to say, I think that we all have to listen, but we also have to be open-minded. You can listen all you want to, but it doesn't mean that you're going to change your mind. We have to really open our minds, open our eyes, listen, be kind. And like Claudine say, speak to one another. I can walk in a mall and smile at somebody and they think you're trying to harm them or something. We just have become so, I don't know. I think it's sad, but protective. I think they guess for themselves. I've appreciated this conversation, and I think we all know that we got to go out here and speak to people. Yeah. And say, start with saying just the words hello.
Yeah, it's not enough to say to somebody, I heard what you said. What you need to really be doing is making sure that you listened.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was, I feel like I'm being repetitive. What an incredible conversation. Beautiful people, and including you, Frank. I mean, you're a beautiful person. Thank you so much. Audience, take 5. We'll be back for what's got to be a fabulous closing hour. So stick around.